Hollywood has always sold dreams, illusions, and perfect smiles. But behind the glossy posters and carefully curated public images lie family secrets so dramatic, heartbreaking, or scandalous that studios would have done anything to keep them buried. Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain to reveal the hidden truths that shaped and sometimes shattered some of the greatest stars of the Golden Age. Some of these stories involve quiet heartbreak, others involve betrayal, abuse, or lifelong deception. And a few are so startling they sound like plot twists from a movie. But they're real, and once you hear them, you'll never see these icons the same way again. Let's begin. 1. Loretta Young, the girl she adopted, was actually her secret daughter. Loretta Young was known as the wholesome, angelic face of Hollywood morality, the woman who refused to be photographed smoking and who insisted on modest costumes. But behind that image hid one of Hollywood's most tightly controlled secrets. In 1935, during filming of The Call of the Wild, Loretta, then 22, had an affair with her much older co-star Clark Gable, who was married at the time. When she became pregnant, she knew the scandal would destroy her career, and possibly Gable's as well. So she vanished from Hollywood under the pretense of illness and quietly gave birth to a baby girl. Several months later, Loretta reappeared in Hollywood with a surprise announcement. She was adopting an orphan baby she named Judy Lewis. For decades, Loretta stuck to her story. She never publicly acknowledged the truth. Judy grew up believing she was adopted, though she noticed she looked strikingly like Clark Gable. Even as an adult, Loretta refused to confirm anything until shortly before her death, when she privately admitted the truth to her daughter. It remains one of the most extraordinary acts of secrecy in Hollywood history. 2. Rita Hayworth, a father who saw her as his property. Rita Hayworth, the legendary goddess of the 1940s, lived a life drenched in glamour. But before she became a screen siren, she endured a childhood that was anything but dreamy. Her father, Eduardo Cancino, was a controlling, jealous, and often abusive man. He forced Rita into adulthood far too early, pushing her into grueling dance performances as a teenager. He strictly controlled her every move, her clothes, her friendships, even her thoughts. Though Rita rarely spoke about the emotional cost, friends and biographers later revealed she spent much of her life trying to escape the shadow of an overbearing father who treated her less like a daughter and more like a commodity. Behind the captivating beauty was a woman who carried deep childhood wounds. 3. Lucille Ball, a childhood shaped by family scandal and trauma. Before she became America's beloved red-headed comedian, Lucille Ball's childhood was marked by tragedy and shame. After her father died when she was young, Lucy's mother remarried a man who had a secret, a past involving criminal allegations. When gossip began circulating in their town, young Lucy was ostracized at school. She felt the weight of adult scandals she didn't understand. The trauma of being judged for other people's actions shaped her for the rest of her life. She became fiercely independent, hyper-aware of public perception, and determined to create a life no one could control but her. It's astonishing to think the woman who brought so much joy to millions came from such a painful beginning. 4. Charlie Chaplin, the son he refused to acknowledge. Charlie Chaplin was one of the most influential figures in cinema history, but his personal life was full of turbulence. One of his darkest chapters involved actress Joan Barry, who claimed Chaplin fathered her child after their relationship ended. Chaplin denied everything. The scandal erupted into a courtroom drama, complete with tabloid frenzy and legal battles. Even when a blood test indicated Chaplin could not be the father, a California court, swayed by public opinion and Chaplin's tarnished reputation, legally declared him the child's father anyway. A ruling that stunned Hollywood and financially bound Chaplin to support a child he insisted wasn't his. It remains one of the most controversial paternity cases of the era. 5. Greta Garbo, actress and possibly spy. Greta Garbo, the enigmatic star of Camille and Ninotchka, was famous for saying, "I want to be alone," but few knew how literal that would become. As tensions escalated before World War II, Garbo quietly shifted from movie sets to political circles. Some historians believe she was informally connected to Swedish intelligence and may have used her international travel to pass information. Whether she acted as a spy or simply exchanged intelligence through her relationships with diplomats, her private life was far more complicated and daring than her public silence suggested. Garbo retired early, living out decades in private, holding secrets the world still debates. 6. Dorothy Dandridge, A Mother's Heartbreaking Burden. Dorothy Dandridge was the first African-American woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar. Her beauty and talent were unmatched, but her private life was marked by tragedy. Dorothy's daughter, Harolyn, suffered severe brain damage due to an injury at birth. Dorothy's mother helped care for the child, but the responsibility weighed heavily on Dorothy, who struggled with guilt, shame, and the emotional and financial burden of caring for a disabled daughter in an era when support systems were nearly non-existent. Hollywood celebrated her on stage, while she wept backstage, powerless to change her child's fate. 7. Marlon Brando, A Family Life Marred by Tragedy. Marlon Brando's on-screen brilliance masked a private life riddled with heartbreak. His household was chaotic, intense, and often volatile, and the emotional fallout touched all of his children. His daughter Cheyenne struggled for years with mental illness. She adored her father, but carried deep wounds from his emotional distance. When her boyfriend was killed by Cheyenne's brother Christian during a violent confrontation, her world collapsed. She never recovered emotionally and died by suicide at just 25. It was one of Hollywood's most tragic family implosions. A reminder that even the greatest actors cannot shield their families from real-life pain. 8. Judy Garland, the studio that stole her childhood. Judy Garland's brilliance came at a terrible cost. From the moment Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer signed her, she was treated more like an investment than a child. Studio executives criticized her weight, controlled her diet, and dictated her every waking hour. Worse, they gave Judy pills, stimulants to keep her awake on set, and sleeping pills to force her to rest. She was only 13. The forced dieting, the pacing drugs, and the relentless pressure shaped the addictions that haunted Judy throughout her adult life. She adored her fans and loved performing, but Hollywood stole her innocence long before she became Dorothy. Her story is one of the industry's most painful cautionary tales. 9. Rock Hudson, forced to hide his true self. Rock Hudson was the epitome of 1950s masculinity, tall, handsome, charming. Women adored him. Men wanted to be him. But underneath that public persona lay a secret he could never reveal. He was a gay man in an era when such a truth would have ended his career instantly. Studio handlers arranged romances and even a marriage to protect his image. Rock lived two lives: the Hollywood idol and the private man constantly afraid of exposure. When he was diagnosed with AIDS in the 1980s, he became one of the first major celebrities associated with the disease. His illness forced the world to confront both the cruelty of the epidemic and the prejudice that forced him to hide himself his entire life. 10. Katharine Hepburn, A brother's death that haunted her forever. Katharine Hepburn was strong, sharp, and fiercely independent. But her life was shaped by one tragedy she never fully escaped. When she was just 13, she discovered the body of her older brother, Tom, who had died by suicide. The trauma was profound. Some biographers believe Katharine was the one who found him. Others say she was simply overwhelmed by the news. But everyone agrees the event changed her forever. She shut down emotionally. She withdrew from school. For years, she pretended to be her brother's age rather than her own, as if trying to rewind time. Behind the confident movie star was a woman who never stopped grieving. 11. Grace Kelly, A Marriage Filled with Secret Betrayals. Grace Kelly's marriage to Prince Rainier III of Monaco was supposed to be a fairy tale, Hollywood royalty becoming real royalty. But inside the palace walls, life was far from magical. Grace struggled under the constraints of royal life. She felt watched, judged, and controlled. Rainier was strict and often emotionally distant. Rumors swirled for years about extramarital affairs from both sides, but public appearances were always polished, flawless, and carefully staged. Behind closed doors, the famous princess cried more often than she smiled. 12. Gene Kelly, 8 perfectionist who terrified his family. Gene Kelly's dynamic charm and innovative choreography revolutionized Hollywood musicals. But at home, that same intensity often turned into harsh perfectionism. His daughter later described him as controlling, demanding, and sometimes frightening, a man whose pursuit of artistic excellence left little space for emotional warmth. Gene held his children to impossible standards, and they walked on eggshells fearing his disappointment. His artistry changed cinema, but his family paid a price for the genius the world adored. 13. Joan Crawford, the dark allegations her children revealed. Joan Crawford was a powerhouse actress known for her discipline, ambition, and razor-sharp determination. But her adopted daughter Christina painted a chilling portrait in her memoir, Mommy Dearest, accusing Joan of physical and emotional abuse. Some children defended Joan. Others supported Christina's claims. Hollywood insiders remain divided to this day. Whether the allegations were exaggerated, accurate, or something in between, the controversy permanently altered Joan's legacy. Even decades after her death, the debate continues, one of Hollywood's most enduring, unsettling mysteries. 14. Spencer Tracy, A Secret Family and a Double Life. Spencer Tracy built his reputation as one of Hollywood's greatest actors, but privately he lived a complicated double life. He remained married to his wife Louise for decades, yet he lived separately and carried on a long-term relationship with Katharine Hepburn. With Louise, he had a son born deaf, a fact that weighed heavily on him emotionally. Tracy blamed himself, carrying guilt that shaped his entire adult life. He struggled with alcoholism, guilt, and Catholic beliefs that forbade divorce. His public strength hid a lifetime of private torment. 15. Ingrid Bergman, publicly shamed for love. Ingrid Bergman's affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini set off a moral firestorm unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. When she became pregnant, America's political and religious leaders publicly condemned her. She lost film roles. She was denounced on the floor of the U.S. Senate, all for falling in love. She eventually rebuilt her career, but the scandal left deep emotional scars. Bergman never expected the world's cruelty simply for choosing motherhood outside of marriage. 16. Elizabeth Taylor, A Childhood of Trauma Behind the Beauty. Elizabeth Taylor dazzled the world with violet eyes and timeless glamour, but behind that beauty was a childhood filled with emotional instability. Her parents were strict, controlling, and heavily invested in her career. Elizabeth was pushed into adulthood before she ever had the chance to be a child. Her chaotic early years contributed to the turbulent relationships that later defined her adult life. Each marriage, breakup, and scandal carried echoes of a girl who never felt safe or understood. 17. Rudolph Valentino, A Life Shadowed by Whispered Rumors. Rudolph Valentino, the silent film idol who defined romance for an entire generation, lived his final years under constant attack from journalists questioning his masculinity, sexuality, and heritage. Gossip columnists mocked him relentlessly, calling him effeminate and foreign, insults intended to destroy his carefully curated image. Valentino battled the humiliation quietly, never addressing the rumors directly. But the cruelty affected him deeply. When he died suddenly at just 31, the world mourned, even as many realized too late how viciously he had been treated.